A simple woman was mocked in a luxury restaurant till they realized who she was. Jessica Hayden adjusted the collar of her faded denim jacket as she wandered past the towering glass facades of San Francisco's financial district. It was the kind of chilly October afternoon that made tourists clutch overpriced coffee cups. But Jessica didn't mind. She liked the briskness. It kept people honest. She glanced at her watch. An older leather-strap model that had seen better days but still ticked with the loyalty of a well-loved companion. 2 hours early. That gave her time to walk, to think, to soak in the city that had slowly, stubbornly become her home. At 35, Jessica still dressed like the Midwestern girl she had always been. Practical sneakers, comfortable jeans, and that worn denim jacket she refused to retire. The same one she'd worn the day she met Nicholas Hayden, now one of the most influential financiers on the West Coast. 5 years later, she was still the same Jessica, though the world around her had changed drastically. Their love story wasn't what the tabloids would have predicted. He was a Harvard-educated billionaire with a portfolio that stretched across 3 continents. She was a soft-spoken children's book illustrator who preferred sketching animals to making small talk. And yet, 5 years of marriage had only deepened the connection between them. Every anniversary, they honored their tradition. She'd spend the day exploring hidden corners of San Francisco, the city she'd grown to love in its contradictions, while Nicholas wrapped up whatever high-stakes deal was demanding his brilliance. Then they'd meet for dinner at a Lumiere, his favorite restaurant chain, known for its elegance, exclusivity, and eye-watering prices. This year, however, Nicholas had surprised her. Instead of their usual quiet table overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, he'd made reservations at Lumiere's brand-new flagship location in the heart of the downtown corridor, a space touted in magazines as a cathedral of culinary refinement. Critics called it a place where luxury breathes through every inch of velvet and glass. Jessica raised an eyebrow at the photos online. It looked like a fashion runway disguised as a dining room. "We've never tried this one," Nicholas had said, that boyish grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Thought we'd make year 5 a little more memorable." Now, standing at the entrance beneath a glittering awning that glowed like a chandelier, Jessica began to suspect he hadn't meant this memorable. The lobby was more like a showroom than a restaurant. Crystal light fixtures dangled like frozen raindrops above sleek, polished floors. Sculptural furniture lined the foyer, and the scent of expensive perfume hung in the air like a secret. A massive floral arrangement towered in the center, as if daring guests to look away. Jessica stepped through the grand glass doors and approached the reception stand. The hostess, barely out of college and dressed like a fashion editor, gave Jessica a once-over, her eyes moving from the sneakers to the denim, then back up to Jessica's calm, unbothered face. Her lips curled into a tight, practiced smile. "Can I help you?" the hostess asked, her voice steeped in a false politeness that didn't quite mask the judgment behind her eyes. "I have a reservation, under Hayden," Jessica replied, gently setting her worn leather purse on the counter. The hostess blinked. "Hayden?" she echoed, glancing toward the maitre d', a tall man with slicked back hair and a jawline that looked sculpted by lighting. He sauntered over, a curious smile forming as he leaned in. "Yes?" he asked smoothly. "Is there an issue?" The hostess tilted her head slightly, still scanning Jessica as though her existence needed to be double-checked. "She says she has a reservation." "Under Hayden," she said, her voice lowered. The maitre d' gave Jessica a once-over, his smirk subtle but unmistakable. "I see. Do you happen to have a confirmation number?" he asked, with a tone that didn't ask at all. Jessica reached into her bag and handed him her phone with the email open. He glanced at the screen, then at her, then back at the screen. His brow furrowed slightly, but his smile didn't fade. Yes, Mr. Nicholas Hayden. Table for two. At 7, he said, drawing the words out slowly. You're early. Yes, Jessica said evenly. I wanted to get a drink before dinner. That's allowed, isn't it? Of course, he said too quickly. Please follow me. But as she stepped away from the counter, she heard it. Barely a whisper, but unmistakable. A soft chuckle from one of the waiters nearby. Then another. She caught the flash of white teeth, the subtle nods toward her jacket, her sneakers, her lack of visible designer anything. Someone muttered something under their breath. She didn't need to hear the exact words. She'd been around long enough to know that tone. A group of women seated at the bar, draped in evening gowns and diamonds, openly stared as she passed. One of them leaned in and said something to the others, prompting a ripple of laughter that wasn't even attempted to be hidden. Jessica didn't flinch. The maitre d' led her to a small table near the rear, close to the kitchens and far from the picture windows where the real guests were seated. The shadows fell heavier there, the air thicker with the scent of truffle oil and condescension. Will this be all right? He asked too sweetly. It's perfect, Jessica replied, settling into the seat as if it were a throne. He handed her a leather-bound menu with an indulgent nod and disappeared without another word. Jessica stared at the menu for a moment, not reading it, just letting the silence fill the space. Her phone buzzed. A message from Nicholas. Running 10 minutes late. Can't wait to see you. Hope you're hungry. She smiled, then set the phone down. Her fingers brushed the rim of her water glass. A waiter passed by, looked at her, then turned on his heel without stopping. Another laughed quietly near the wine station, not even pretending to hide the glance he gave her table. It was clear. They thought she didn't belong, that she'd wandered in by mistake, or worse, had pretended her way in. Their smirks were as sharp as any blade. But Jessica didn't react. She didn't raise her voice, or flash a black card or drop a famous name. Because she didn't need to. They would find out soon enough. And when they did, their smiles would vanish faster than a bottle of vintage Dom Perignon in a hedge funder's hand. Just then, the heavy glass door at the front swung open, and in walked Nicholas Hayden. To some, he was the face of financial power in Silicon Valley. To others, he was the elusive investor whose quiet decisions shaped the economy itself. Tall, charismatic, dressed in a sleek charcoal gray suit tailored to perfection, he carried himself like a man who knew how much he was worth and how little he needed to prove it. But at that moment, he was just a husband, looking for his wife, and about to change everything. 5 years ago, on their first date, Nicholas had said something that still echoed in Jessica's mind whenever she thought of their beginnings. "I'm not trying to impress you with my bank account," he told her in a modest coffee shop near the corner of Broadway. "I just want to know the woman who creates worlds with her paintbrush." That had been the start of everything. She hadn't needed any grand gestures, any flashy displays of wealth. Nicholas had been different from the polished men she'd met before. He wasn't interested in proving anything. All he wanted was to know her, and that felt like the most extravagant thing of all. Now, 5 years later, their worlds had intertwined in ways she never could have predicted. He, with his global influence and high-rise boardrooms. She, with her quiet life as a children's book illustrator, creating whimsical worlds with nothing more than the strokes of her pen. Yet somehow, they had balanced each other in ways that felt both natural and improbable. Jessica had never changed who she was. Not for anyone. She still drove her beat-up, reliable Volvo, the same one that had taken her on long drives to nowhere in particular when she was single. She still shopped at local farmers markets, always on the lookout for fresh produce and homemade goods. And most of all, she still wore the same comfortable clothes, the simple, unassuming outfits that made her feel at home in her own skin. It didn't matter that her husband was a billionaire. She was still the woman who loved to wear worn denim jackets and faded sneakers, a woman who didn't need the trappings of wealth to feel valuable. Now, standing outside the gleaming glass facade of Lumiere, she took a moment to collect herself. The restaurant was an architectural masterpiece, occupying the entire ground floor of one of the city's tallest skyscrapers. From the outside, the interior was a study in elegance. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing a stunning dining room filled with crystal chandeliers that seemed to shimmer with a life of their own. The high ceilings allowed the light to play in prismatic patterns across the white-clothed tables, which were impeccably set with fine china and polished silverware. Everything about the place screamed luxury in a way that made Jessica feel both excited and slightly out of place. But she wasn't here to compare herself to anyone. She was here because it was their anniversary, and Nicholas had planned something special. As she stood before the restaurant, feeling the cool breeze of the evening on her cheeks, she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. The world seemed to fall silent for a moment, as though holding its breath, before the city resumed its hustle around her. She ran her fingers over the small gift box in her pocket. Inside was a vintage watch she had found for Nicholas. It wasn't extravagant by his standards, but it was meaningful. It was engraved with the coordinates of the exact spot where they'd first met, a quiet moment in a crowded gala, where they had shared an unexpected connection. For all the opulence in Nicholas's life, Jessica had always known that the value of a gift wasn't in its price tag. It was in the story it told. Her chest tightened with anticipation as she stepped forward. It was their tradition. They'd meet after a day spent apart, and then enjoy a quiet dinner together, marking the years they'd spent building their life. This year felt different, though. She could feel it in the air. Something had shifted between them. But it wasn't fear or tension. It was excitement, the kind of excitement that comes with knowing they were creating something beautiful together, even as the world around them continued to turn. Taking a deep breath, she pulled open the heavy glass door to the restaurant, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor as she entered. The hostess, dressed in a sleek black gown, looked up and smiled. "Good evening. How can I assist you?" Her voice was smooth, rehearsed, and the smile was as practiced as the others Jessica had seen earlier. But something in the woman's eyes told a different story. Her gaze swept over Jessica's outfit, a denim jacket, simple and unadorned, and for a brief moment, a flicker of something, perhaps condescension or surprise, passed over her face. It was gone in an instant, replaced by that same professional smile. "I have a reservation under Hayden," Jessica said, her voice steady but warm. The hostess's smile faltered, just slightly, before she checked the list. She scanned it once, then twice, her fingers hovering above the screen. Jessica wasn't sure if it was the sudden change in the woman's demeanor or the way she seemed to hesitate just a little too long. But something in the air felt off. "I'm sorry, I don't see a reservation for Hayden," the hostess said, her tone now shifting to something colder, less accommodating. "Are you sure about the name?" Jessica's smile didn't waver. "I'm sure," she said calmly, trying not to let the irritation creep into her voice. "Nicholas Hayden. My husband's name is on the reservation. Should I show you the confirmation?" The hostess glanced at the maitre d', who had been observing the exchange from a distance. He walked over with that cool confidence that came from being in charge of the most exclusive establishment in the city. His gaze quickly swept over Jessica. Denim jacket, simple skirt, no designer labels. He raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "I'm afraid there's some confusion, ma'am," he said, his voice smooth but laced with a hint of condescension. "The reservation seems to be for Mr. Nicholas Hayden, yes. But I'm afraid I don't see your name on the guest list." Jessica's expression remained unchanged, though she could feel the rising heat of frustration beneath the calm. "I am Mrs. Nicholas Hayden," she said quietly but firmly, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. She didn't need to shout. The truth, in all its simplicity, was louder than anything they could throw at her. The maitre d's cool composure faltered for just a split second. He glanced between Jessica and the hostess, as if deciding whether to contest her claim. But before he could speak, the restaurant's front doors swung open. Nicholas had arrived.